You've stopped texting. They've stopped texting. And now you're sitting in this deafening silence, wondering if they've even noticed you're gone. Are they relieved? Do they miss you? Or is this exactly what they wanted from the beginning? Here's what most people don't understand about mutual no contact with an avoidant partner. This isn't the ending you think it is. It's actually the beginning of a psychological unraveling that will reveal the entire truth about your relationship, about them, and most importantly about you. By the time this video ends, you're going to understand the hidden emotional journey your avoidant ex is going through right now in the silence. You'll learn why their feelings shift dramatically as weeks pass, and you'll discover how to read the signs that tell you whether they're genuinely evolving or just running the same old patterns with a new face. Because what happens in mutual silence isn't about who breaks first, it's about who transforms, and I'm going to show you exactly how to recognize the difference. So let's talk about what's actually happening right now, in this very moment, inside your avoidant partner's mind, and I promise you, it's not what you're imagining. Right now, while you're probably anxious and overthinking every moment of your relationship, your avoidant partner is likely experiencing something unexpected. Relief. When both sides go silent, the avoidant nervous system reads this as pure safety. All the emotional pressure they've been carrying, the unspoken expectations, the need to show up, to explain themselves, to be emotionally available, it all disappears in an instant. Attachment researchers have identified what they call deactivating strategies in avoidant individuals. When a relationship starts feeling too intimate, too demanding, or too emotionally intense, their nervous system literally interprets closeness as a threat. It's not conscious, it's neurological. Their body sends danger signals even when there's no actual danger present. So when you stop reaching out, their system finally relaxes. The alarm shuts off. They can breathe again. But here's what makes this silence fundamentally different from every other time there's been distance in your relationship. In the past, they felt safe because they knew you'd eventually reach out. You were the one managing the connection. You were the one bridging the gap. They had emotional security without vulnerability. They maintained control without effort. They knew deep down that you'd always be there. But when you stop contacting them too, when the silence becomes mutual, that invisible safety net disappears, and their sense of control begins to fracture. This is the moment when relief stops being comfortable. Because what comes next is something they didn't prepare for. Something that's going to expose the truth about whether this person can actually do real intimacy, or if they just like the idea of having you round. As days turn into weeks, that initial relief morphs into something more complex. Curiosity, then confusion, then, eventually, a creeping sense of fear. They start wondering why you're not chasing anymore. The silence that felt like liberation starts to feel like rejection. And their mind begins asking questions it never had to confront before. Why haven't they reached out? Did they actually move on? Why aren't they fighting for us? What if I've lost them for real this time? If this is resonating with your experience right now, go ahead and hit the like button. It genuinely helps me understand what content is actually serving you, and it helps this reach other people who need to hear it. This confusion phase is when you'll start noticing the tests. They'll watch your social media stories. They'll like an old photo from months ago. They'll send seemingly innocent messages that feel casual but are anything but. Hey, how have you been? Saw this and thought of you. Random question, but these aren't genuine attempts at reconnection. They're breadcrumbs. They're checking to see if you're still emotionally available, if the door is still cracked open, if they can still have access to you without actually being vulnerable. And this is critical to understand. These little tests aren't about missing you as a person. They're about regaining control of the dynamic. They're verifying that their emotional safety net, you, is still in place. Because without your pursuit, They're forced to confront something absolutely terrifying for an avoidant person. The fear of being forgotten, the fear of not mattering, the fear that maybe they weren't as important to you as they thought. But while they're spiraling through confusion and fear, something completely different is happening on your side of the silence. And this difference is what determines how this entire situation resolves. At first, the silence is excruciating. You're hurting. You're replaying every conversation, every moment, every sign you might have missed. You're second-guessing your decision not to reach out. Your anxious attachment is screaming at you to fix it, to make contact, to keep the connection alive at any cost. But then slowly, something fundamental begins to shift. Without the constant emotional labor of maintaining the relationship, managing their moods, interpreting their silence, you start to reclaim energy you didn't even realize you'd lost. You begin to breathe more deeply. The silence that once felt like punishment starts to feel like protection, like peace. You start reclaiming your sense of self-worth that got eroded in the relationship. You begin seeing the dynamic with clarity, how much effort you were pouring in, how little you were receiving back, how you were constantly managing their emotions while completely neglecting your own needs. And gradually, the silence stops being something you're enduring and becomes something you're choosing. It transforms into its own kind of closure. This is where genuine detachment happens. Not the performative kind where you're secretly hoping they'll notice and come running back, but the real kind where you genuinely stop needing them to choose you because you've finally chosen yourself. And here's what's profound about this shift. While you're healing, growing, and rediscovering who you are outside this relationship, they're experiencing the emotional consequences of their defense mechanisms for possibly the first time. Loneliness, regret, nostalgia, a gnawing fear of being forgotten. They might replay memories of you. They might quietly long for the connection you shared, but they feel too defended, too guarded to reach out directly, because reaching out means admitting they need you. And for an avoidant person, that admission feels like losing their entire identity. Eventually, many avoidant people do return. A cautious text, a casual comment, a subtle re-entry into your world, not with apologies or explanations, not with depth or vulnerability, but with a test to see if the door is still open. They're checking whether you're still the same person who used to chase them, who used to accept breadcrumbs, who used to settle for inconsistency. But here's what separates this moment from all the previous cycles. By now, you're no longer hooked by their patterns. Their distance doesn't feel mysterious or intriguing anymore. It feels predictable. You can see it clearly for exactly what it is. A defense mechanism. A fear of intimacy dressed up as independence and self-sufficiency. And this is where you face the most important choice. Not based on hope, not based on potential, not based on who they could become if they just tried harder, but based on who they're demonstrating they are right now, in this moment, through their actions. When an avoidant person who's genuinely doing inner work reaches out after silence, there's accountability present. They acknowledge the distance, they express what they've been reflecting on. They might not have all the answers and they might still be scared, but they show you through their actions that they're capable of moving toward you even when it's deeply uncomfortable. But if they reach out with breadcrumbs, with "hey stranger" messages that go nowhere, with surface-level conversations that carefully avoid any real depth or vulnerability, that's giving you your answer in real time. What they're showing you is this: I can miss you. I can think about you. I can feel nostalgic about what we had. But I'm not willing to do the uncomfortable, messy work of actually showing up authentically. And no amount of silence, no amount of space, no amount of waiting is going to change that fundamental truth. Because this isn't about using the right tactics or timing. This is about capacity. This is about whether they have the emotional resources and willingness to do the work required for real intimacy. Your real power emerges when you stop reaching out, not as a strategy to manipulate them into missing you, but because you've genuinely healed enough that you no longer need them to validate your worth. Your silence becomes a statement of real emotional independence, and that's precisely what an avoidant person feels most intensely. It penetrates their defenses in a way that chasing never could. For some avoidant individuals, this becomes a genuine wake-up call that catalyzes their healing journey. They realize what they've lost. They start confronting their patterns. They begin doing the difficult inner work. They start learning that intimacy doesn't actually mean losing themselves. For others, they simply escape into new distractions, a new relationship, throwing themselves into work, new hobbies, new cities, anything to avoid feeling what the silence is trying to teach them. And that's not your failure. That's not something you could have prevented. That's their choice, their path, their responsibility. Either way, silence becomes the mirror that reveals both your truth and theirs. It shows you who you're becoming without them, and it shows them who they are without someone else managing their emotional world. So here's where you are right now. You're in the silence, and the question isn't whether they'll eventually reach out. The question is, who are you becoming in this silence? Are you using this time to heal, to establish real boundaries that you'll actually maintain, to rebuild your sense of self-worth that got damaged in this relationship? Or are you sitting in the silence, holding your breath, waiting for them to validate you by coming back? Because in the end, what determines your future has nothing to do with who contacts whom first. It's about who grows. It's about who evolves. It's about who does the work. For you, the silence can become a crucible for self-worth and emotional freedom. A space where you remember who you were before this relationship and discover who you're becoming after it. For them, it becomes a confrontation with fear and unhealed wounds. A choice point between continuing old patterns or finally doing something different. Silence doesn't destroy real connection. It simply reveals whether the foundation was strong enough to exist without someone constantly chasing, convincing, and compensating. And if it wasn't strong enough to survive without you doing all the work, then what you're losing isn't actually love. It's the exhausting, soul-draining job of trying to convince someone to choose you. So what actually happens next when both you and your avoidant partner go completely silent? You get to discover who you are without them. You get to find out what you're capable of when you're not pouring all your energy into managing someone else's fear of intimacy. You get to learn what it feels like to choose yourself first. And that discovery, that transformation, that reclamation of your own life is the most powerful thing that could possibly happen. Not just for this relationship, but for every relationship you'll have moving forward. Because you're learning the most important lesson. You can't love someone into healing. You can't sacrifice yourself into making someone ready. You can't chase someone into choosing you. Real love doesn't require you to shrink yourself, to accept breadcrumbs, to live in constant anxiety about whether you're too much or not enough. Real love meets you where you are. It shows up consistently. It does the work even when it's uncomfortable. And if this silence is teaching you to stop settling for anything less than that, then it's not an ending, it's a beginning. If you found real value in this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Your support helps this content reach people who need to hear these truths. And remember, the silence isn't empty. It's full of your transformation.